What's up, and welcome to the Cover 2 Recap. I'm BruinSportsReport.com publisher Edward Lewis. This is the OC Register UCLA beat writer Ryan Karchi. We're here today after the third practice of spring has just wrapped up for UCLA. We're out at Spalding Field, where some of the news and notes of the day were an injury happened. Ben Wysocki was carted off the field. Morris says it's an ankle injury. He doesn't really know how serious it is. Trey Hale left early. And then the other news was Malcolm Bunch was not out here today, but it looks like he'll be ready to go on Monday. Other than that, the news and notes were pretty light. No attrition today, as we've seen kind of the first 2 days. But we had a lot of defensive guys today in terms of interviews. We got Jeff Ulbrich. We got Zach Whitley. We got Isaac Svaine. We talked a lot about the changes in Ulbrich to Spanos and stuff. Ryan, what was your take on talking with Ulbrich today and what you're going to see from the defense going forward?
You know, the first thing I noticed with Ulbrich, just in terms of mass defensive changes, is that there's just a lot more energy. I mean, you watch the guy coach. He's running up and down the field. I mean, he's working up a sweat the entire time. It's a little different. I feel like he's a little bit more hands-on than maybe Lou Spanos was last season. And I think that has kind of shown. There's a little bit more energy on defense. I know he'll definitely be needed in the linebackers. I think, probably the one battle we've watched the most, since there aren't that many battles. I think Kenny Orgioki at outside linebacker, he was kind of the guy who we all expected to see something from. I think there's still a little bit of work there to be done. I know, Ulbrich wouldn't comment too much on specific guys, but it seems like they're going to change up the system a little bit. I know he talked about tweaking it, maybe making it a little more wide open, especially adding in some more 4-3 schematic changes, which I think, he kind of mentioned that lends itself to this league, that, there's going to be a little bit more nickel. I know they noticed they played a little bit more nickel last year than maybe they expected. So I think we've seen some of those changes, starting to form at first. Maybe an extra, guy who's more of a defensive end linebacker hybrid, kind of rushing off the edge. I know that's kind of what they see with Orgioki. But I know we'll see more of those changes as it comes. But it seems like, the first few days of the Jeff Ulbrich defense has kind of gotten off to a fast start.
If you get the opportunity to watch Jeff's post-game press conference today, I mean, it's real inspiring. The guy is a complete 360, 580, whatever, from what Lou Spanos was last year in terms of just his energy, his passion, the way he talks and the way he speaks. You could tell it's already translating to the field in terms of guys being more energetic out there.
And, I think it's kind of interesting because he made such a fast rise. I mean, just a few years ago, this guy was a special teams assistant for the Seattle Seahawks, and now he's made this quick rise. He's already, defensive coordinator of a major football program. I think that speaks a lot to how he coaches. I know him and Jim Mora seem to really be on the same page. I think that's kind of a lot what helped, Mora make that decision. I talked to a lot of players, and it seemed to them that they kind of said it was a no-brainer. Everyone knew when Spanos left for the NFL that, Coach Ulbrich was obviously the guy to replace him. And I know, Mora kind of made that seem like that was the case today.
Moving on to the field, it's week one, has finally wrapped up, so we got 3 practices to see of guys, and today was the first full contact, full pads kind of deal. Give me some of your standouts. Give me 3 guys that you really liked.
First off, I think the guy who's stood out the most, who's kind of impressed me, has been Caleb Benenoch. I know we've talked about him quite a bit, but the guy just looks like a different player. I mean, I initially was a little, weary of him moving to left tackle because it didn't seem like he fit there. He was obviously more of a prototype right tackle, but so far he's been doing really well. I mean, I've seen him go up against, Ellis McCarthy quite a bit. He's gone up a little against O.O. Digizua. Most of the time, he's been handling himself. I mean, the pocket today, just watching Brett Hundley throw in 11-on-11, the pocket was so much more stable than it's been, in springs past. So, I was really impressed with him. Also, staying on the offensive line, Najee Torin. I know Jim Mora brought him up as someone who's especially surprised him as an early enrollee. The dude has a mean streak. I mean, he's not necessarily the biggest guy, but I think at this point, he's kind of already worked his way into that 2 deep at guard. Maybe things change when Malcolm Bunch comes back, but he's just kind of got that ferocity that you want from an inside, run blocking guard. And the last guy, I know this was the first day that Jim Mora mentioned him, but Craig Lee has just looked kind of like a different player, just in terms of explosion, how quick he is. I think that's something I've noticed more than anything. He's definitely the fastest running back that they have on this roster. In terms of big playability, I think, there's not really that guy, and I think Craig Lee is probably going to be that guy this season. It seems like so far. It's still, pass blocking has always been the problem, and that's kind of what we'll be watching in the coming weeks.
My 3 guys were Zach Whitley, first and foremost. I can't say enough. I mean, he might be my favorite player to watch out here on this field, just in terms of how aggressive he is. I mean, for a guy, he literally should be in high school right now, taking math class, and instead he's out here just hitting everything and anything. I mean, sure, he has his mistakes and he has his bumps. Alex Redmond pancaked him twice today in back-to-back plays, but just the way he moves, the ferocity, like you said with Najee Torn, you could tell they come from the same school out in Texas, and that's the way they're taught. Love his game. The other guy is Mossy Johnson. I know Jim Moore raved about it after practice today, but he really has been good. That's a guy, we didn't really think that highly of coming out of high school. He's a 3-star recruit, and then when he blew out his knee, there's some question of whether or not he'd even make it to UCLA, and he's out here. He looks like the second best slot receiver behind Devin Fuller, so he's been great. My last guy is Tahan Goodman. I think Tahan has a shot to beat out Anthony Jefferson for the starting safety job, just in terms of his athleticism and the skills and the plays he's making out here as a rangy kind of free safety. I think he provides a little more playmaking ability than Anthony Jefferson does.
Even if he doesn't beat out Anthony Jefferson, it's something, Ulbrich kind of spoke to it, is that they're going to be out of that nickel a little bit more often. There's going to be more 4-3 concepts. So he's very clearly made himself that fifth DB. So even if he doesn't beat out Jefferson, it seems like he's going to play quite a bit.
Now, on the flip side of all of that, there are some guys that we'd like to see a little bit more of. My kind of guys were Priest Willis. I know he's been kind of much maligned coming in as a Rivals 100 guy, 4-star, 5-star guy, but he hasn't really done a whole lot out here. He's got to figure out whether he's a corner or a safety or both or whatever, because right now he's getting buried in the depth chart. And, you got Jaleel Wadu coming in. You got Denzel Fisher coming in. You got Darius Pickett coming on strong. I mean, he needs to start working here pretty soon. Other guys, Deion Hollins, I think he's not using that quickness off the edge like he was last year. I think he needs to start showing that a little bit more. Some of your guys, who do you got?
I know Kenny Orgioki there. I mentioned him a little bit before, but the expectations are so high for him, especially kind of filling that Anthony Barr role. I haven't necessarily seen that explosion. I know he had some mental mistakes last year. I haven't seen those quite as much, but I still think he needs to kind of figure out where he is on the field, get more of an idea of that scheme and what his role is for him to really start, standing out. The other guy, I watched a little bit of the running backs today. Jordan James looked pretty good. He looks bigger to me. We already mentioned Craig Lee, and Stephen Manfro had a few moments, but Paul Perkins has been kind of quiet so far. And I'm a guy who actually really liked Perkins last year. I thought he was probably the best running back on the roster in some flashes, but he hasn't really shown that much this year. And I wonder if maybe if Craig Lee ends up having a great spring, great fall, maybe he kind of pushes him out a little bit. Too early to tell at this point. Obviously, this is the first pads practice, but I'd like to see more from him in the future.
UCLA returns to practice on Monday. For coverage of that and today and all of spring, you can follow him on Twitter at Ryan_Karchi and at OCRegister.com. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at EdwardLewisBSR and at BruinSportsport.com. Until the next time, thanks for tuning in to the Cover 2 Recap.